You can have a challenging day. You can have something really challenging happen in your life. There's, as you know, there's all kinds of
We call them relaunches.
yeah, they're relaunches, every Tuesday. Sometimes.
Exactly.
But this idea of knowing that you're playing for something more, you don't know what that's going to look like, but I firmly believe in a better way.
Welcome to the Relaunch Podcast. This is going to be so good. You know how I know? Because when I first met this woman, it was immediate, just friendship sparks. It's like, oh my gosh, we could talk about this, we could talk about that. There is so much to go into here. But I am going to focus for all of you listening on something that is so significant in so many of our lives right now as we relaunch and as we think about newness, as we think about change, as we think about relaunches. And so today, again, the Relaunch Podcast is where we uncover stories of reinvention and sometimes those bold career moves. And today we are going to be joined by Linda Boff. She is a trailblazer in marketing who's navigated truly uncharted territories throughout her career, from shaping creative digital marketing at GE to stepping into her newest role as CEO in a brand new industry. So, I mean, how many of us want to make a change, but we don't know how? Linda's journey is all about embracing a challenger mindset and finding growth in the unexpected. In this episode, she is going to share how taking those risks and tackling the unknown have actually helped define her path and how they can actually inspire yours. Linda, it is so amazing to finally have this scheduled. We are here, so excited for this conversation.
Hilary, it is my pleasure and honor to be here. I've been looking forward to this. I'm a big fan of what you do and just the whole idea of relaunching. So thrilled to be here, excited for the conversation.
Well, so thrilled about the relaunching concept because you are the queen of it, girl. This is like, you've done it. I mean, we're going to talk today. I mean, GE, can we just talk about, that time in your life? How long were you there? Let's talk about the significant relaunch of what happened and what shaped you
Yeah.
when you were in this powerhouse position.
Yeah, well, thank you. So GE has always held and will always hold a huge part of my heart. I was there 20 years, the last 10 as CMO. I had the honor of working for three storied CEOs in that time and watching a portfolio and being a part of a portfolio transformation all the way through to last April when the company split into three separate publicly
Mhm.
traded companies. So talk about relaunching. That was the ultimate relaunch. But to work at a company like that has such a essential role in the world of healthcare, the world of energy, the world of transportation through flight, is it's kind of a pinch me brand, and it's doubly so because it's not a brand that you think about all that often when things are going well. You don't think about the fact that the room that you're in on a cold day is warm and being heated. You don't think about necessarily that the machinery being used during a mammogram. So the work is so important, but sometimes it's invisibly so, which made it a kind of a constant treasure hunt in finding and telling those stories, which I love doing. I spent a long time there, very proud of the team, very proud of the work that we did. And then 5 months ago,
No, you can't keep, you
you
are
don't want
going
me
way
to go
too
there
fast.
yet.
I mean, I'm not ready for that one. I'm not ready for the next relaunch. I got to get through the
Stick
first
with
one.
this for the moment.
We gotta step back here. You just said three different CEOs that you've
Yep.
worked for, and they're all iconic CEOs. General Electric. I mean, it's one of the biggest names out there. And you started as a young woman in this field. Can you share with us what brought you to GE and also some of the challenges that you faced along the way being a woman.
Yeah. So I'll take a little bit of a step back if I could, in that I had already done several things before I had gotten to GE. I was passionate in college about radio. I went to ABC Radio Networks as my first job. I worked in magazine publishing. I worked in a big museum. I worked in a financial institution. And I would say the thing that has propelled me, because I think it's important in this conversation, is I am very curious, and I'm always, Hilary, looking for a challenge that doesn't resemble something I've done before. I love
I like that.
the figuring out the puzzle. And so when the opportunity came 20 years ago to go to GE, I had never worked in industry before. I had, at the time, been in external marketing. The job that I took at GE was different than any job I had done. It was still within the communications sector, but the job was to do employee marketing. And I remember during the interview saying to the person I would go to work for, "Well, this sounds so interesting, but I haven't done this before. So let me introduce you to a friend of mine who I think would be perfect for this." And the person at the time said to me, "No, no, 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 no. I want you in this job because you haven't done it before, because you'll bring a fresh perspective." And I'm such a believer in fresh eyes, in different perspectives, in taking the experiences that you've had and bringing them forward, and being able to apply but kind of shapeshift a little bit. So
Mhm.
I brought what I had to GE, which didn't resemble what the fields they were in, but somehow it still worked.
It's interesting because as you're sitting here saying the different perspectives, the fresh eyes, I love the shape shift. What you have done and you've continued to do so well is given yourself an opportunity to step out of your comfort zone. There's a lot of people right now very hesitant on stepping out of their comfort zone. Any words of advice based on your years of experience around doing this? And we're going to get to that next relaunch, but any
Yeah,
words
yeah.
of advice around
Yeah.
that because it's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and it's not a it's uncomfortable, as you said. When I sometimes describe it as writing with your left hand. You still know how to write, you still know what the letters look like, but it takes you a while to figure it out. Um, I guess I'll give you some words of advice, and maybe some things that to me don't seem like superpowers, but can be. So
Mm.
I think embracing the uncomfortable and knowing that it's going to be a little bit of a slog. A friend of mine said to me in the midst of a job change, "Embrace the suck." And he was right. You have
Yeah.
to, I hope I can say that. You have to
Yes.
embrace the fact that it's hard. Now, I happen to like hard. So for me, that is, well, it's still uncomfortable. I like the idea that if it were easy, everybody would do it, as they said in League of My Own. So League of Their Own. So I would say know that that's going to be the case, and give yourself some time and patience and grace. I think we don't give ourselves grace. I think I can be impatient with myself. I think lots of people can feel that way. I would remind folks listening, as I've reminded myself, that is the growth that you gain in these times is really immeasurable. I think it's great mentally. I think it's what keeps you sharp as you continue to grow, to age, what have you, because you are making, it's exercise for your mind, right? We exercise our bodies, but like this way, you're literally challenging yourself. It may not be doing Sudoku, but it's something else. And then the last thing I'd say, I mentioned I'm a curious person, and I am. I also think in some ways I'm naive, and I
Mm.
have let that be a little bit of a engine for me. I don't. I'm naive about how tough it can be, but that insulates me a little bit to the woe is me. Um, so I don't know, a couple thoughts that come to
Interesting
mind.
though. I mean, naive. I'm not sure that that's necessarily what, because every time, your curiosity, it's almost like you have this quest for newness and the challenges. And I often say when I'm coaching people, I'm like, okay, if you can go every single day and challenge yourself with one thing, it doesn't have to be a gigantic thing,
Yeah,
but one thing,
yeah,
at the end of the day, more power to you.
yeah, yeah,
And also another thing that you mentioned, which I really want people to hear, is that your perspective on failing,
mm,
and we talked about it the last time.
yeah.
Can you share how your view, because it goes back to being naive, and it's like, hey, but you also have a very unique approach when something doesn't work out, your mindset on moving on.
Yeah. I'm a competitive person.
Mhm.
I like to win, but I hate to lose. Really hate to lose. And what I find is, I'll use GE as an example if I could. Um, we about 7 years ago really were going through a challenging time financially, operationally, et cetera, well documented. And that has literally reversed itself at this point, thanks to the hard work of the team there, CEO and the rest of the team. Um, I remember saying this to you the last time we spoke, which is I didn't want to leave when we were on a losing team. I just didn't. It was not something I felt I could carry around. I didn't think I could look in the mirror. I didn't think I could look my teammates in the eye and just peace out when things weren't going well. And it hardened my resolve to fight for a better day. And I go back to that fact. I hate to lose. And I didn't want to be part of a losing team. And honestly, when things are challenging and you know, you can have a challenging day, you can have something really challenging happen in your life. There's, as you know, there's all kinds of
We call them relaunches.
yeah, they're
Those really
relaunches.
big ones that happen.
They're relaunches, every Tuesday. Sometimes.
Exactly.
But this idea of knowing that you're playing for something more, you don't know what that's going to look like, but I firmly believe in a better way. I firmly do. And I think it is a combination of some of what we're talking about. It's curiosity. I think it's hard work. I do believe in hard work. I don't believe in a lot of shortcuts. Sometimes you get lucky, but most of the time you make your own luck. So that motivated me. And I think for the rest of my career, perhaps the rest of my life, I will think back to that moment as you know I could have been defeated or said, okay, this is not going to work, and I think I would have lost. I think I would have lost as a human.
I I agree, because if you can't just, the way that you're describing it, it's one of these that I stayed at Oracle for almost 10 years. And I thought I was a dinosaur at that point because it was high tech and everyone was leaving. And you mentioned this whole idea that you don't ever want to quit, but you and I both grew up in a time period where it was a man's world. And there were definitely instances that you've mentioned and I've read about
Yeah.
that push the edge. And sometimes, did you ever feel, which, because I did, just so you know, I did, that I was a woman, but I was trying to act like a man. I was trying to be at the guys table in the boys club,
Yeah.
and it never felt right. What about this, the boys club? How did you navigate through all of that? And did you feel like you were a woman in a man's
Oh
body, or a
yes.
man in a woman's body?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. I mean, particularly because, I've been working for God, close to 40 years. So, over the early decades, um, Absolutely. And to this day, there was a time earlier this week where I was one of a few women in a giant room of men. And so I'd say it gets easier as you get further in your career. I think was emboldened along the way because I realized, Hilary, if I didn't use my voice, who else was going to use their voice? And I think as I look back to my younger me, I wish I could go back and give her advice and say, be bolder, speak up more, use your voice more. That's what I say to my daughter. That's what I say to young women who I work with. I wasn't that person. I wish I was. So all I can do now is try to give that back. But I think the other thing I can do, you can do, um, is to is to be the change. Example, just one. When I'm asked to join a panel discussion, I won't do it if I'm the only woman on the panel because I do not
Mhm.
want to be the one. I want to be surrounded by. So it's just such a tactical example, but I think as women, we do have to carry as we climb, and I think that is harder sometimes when you're younger, although I hope less hard than it was for me.
You know what? I'm nodding my head right now for those that can't see because we're going to go into, and I like the whole idea about the wise woman that we are now,
Yeah,
and if we could go back
yeah,
and give our former self, our younger version of us, a
yeah,
little advice. But there's also the ability that we've made it through. We were scrappy enough that we got to where we are
yeah,
now,
yeah,
and sometimes you think back and you're like, God, I wish I could have, I should have, I didn't. But it's all part of our growing. It's all part of that stage. I do want you to go back to, you stayed at GE for a very long time. And as you said, there was always those points of, wait, I can't go now because now we have this issue I've got to solve. And then there was another one. How did you finally make a decision to leave?
mm,
And how did that significantly affect the relaunch that you are going through right now?
yeah. As I said, 7 years or so ago, it would have been easier to go than to stay, but I'm very glad I stayed. Um, I don't want to equate myself to an athlete. I'm a terrible athlete. But I think there is a part of you, there certainly was a part of me that knew that it was time to go do something else. Now, for me, I think it was very fortunate in that we decided, as I said a few minutes ago, um, uh, to separate the company into three. So that to me was the perfect moment because
Mm.
there, I guess twofold. One, I had the privilege of sort of overseeing the whole thing, and when it was time for it to become triplets, there were so
Mhm.
many wonderful people, some of whom were on my team, who had the opportunity to take that role at one of those three companies. And that was a joyous thing to say. It was joyous. And I felt as though I had done everything that I could do. I didn't leave a single thing on the table. I literally, with my team, because this was not a solo exercise, we ran through the tape together. And at that point, I was good. I was good. The
So,
company was in a great place.
Linda,
I was ready.
what's interesting is that I can still remember the day I walked out of what we used to call the Emerald Tower, the Oracle buildings.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of this like, who am I?
Yeah.
Like, I have been this person at Oracle for so long.
Yeah.
How did you feel when all of a sudden, you're a couple months after the identity, it's like an identity
Oh, it
crisis, right?
completely
Talk about midlife crisis. It's an identity crisis of, I've always been known as CMO of GM
is.
or GE. And now I'm And now what am I? I mean,
Oh,
it's an
it's really
interesting.
hard, and to say otherwise would just be lying. I mean, I knew that, I always think about, like your email signature or your email address, Linda Boff
Right.
at, et cetera. And I know that I'm not what was after the ampersand. I'm what's before the ampersand. I'm Linda Boff. But the association, as it was for you and Oracle, was so deeply embedded and deeply loved. I mean, as I said, I love this company. I always will. I love what
Mm.
they stand for. Certainly, the people are extraordinary. So it is a little bit of an identity crisis, and I think, God, I don't know that I have any great advice because it's hard. I think you have to know that you're not defined by your company. You're defined by who you are, how you act, how you treat people. Um, but it was peanut butter in my mouth. I can remember those days.
That's a great way to say it.
Right? I mean, it was 6 months ago. It wasn't 6 years ago. And,
Mm.
saying hello to people at a conference or, out socially. And it just was, I kind of felt like I don't know, left my sweater at home or something. It was just odd. It was odd. It was uncomfortable. But then you realize, you know, there are people who I think were very kind to me because of where I worked. And then I think there were people that were my real friends. You start to see that too.
And there is something to be said about, as a woman, we identify ourselves with so many labels and we have all these masks that we wear. And when you take off a significant one, and whether it's losing the Mrs. to the Mr. in a
Yeah.
divorce, or whether it's losing the VP or the C suite title or whatever it is, and you're leaving, and you have that moment of just being able to breathe in, you're like, oh boy,
That is
it
so
grounds you.
true.
It's,
I'll,
it's
I'll tell you, this is just a super quick anecdote.
mm,
After leaving, this was only about a month ago. I was speaking at a conference with a couple other folks on stage. In my new role, I wasn't at GE, and a couple of people came up to me afterward, and they said, "I've heard you speak a bunch of times. I've never seen you so comfortable with who you are.
oh,
You shed that corporate persona." Now, honestly,
mm,
I didn't even think I had a corporate persona. I'm pretty casual. What you see is what you get. But I didn't even realize that.
that's the thing.
That's the
It's like a nesting doll. And you break open that, that first layer, that where it goes, it kind of squeals, it goes that squeaky sound when you're undoing that first, and then you have the second, and you go all the way down to the little one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a little of that. So we've got to talk about your relaunch that, as you said, it's been 6 months. And already you are, you couldn't wait long. Somebody snatched you up. But tell us about this relaunch because
Yeah.
it is remarkable.
Thank you. So when I decided to leave GE, I made a very short list. I very short list of more of what I didn't want to do than what I did, because I see, as a marketer, I see possibilities everywhere. Maybe that's a common trait. I don't know. And I didn't want to go to another brand. I sort of felt this, monogamy, so to speak, with GE. It was a long marriage and a happy marriage. But I wanted to build, and I wanted to work with a group of people that I sort of go to battle with. And so, what I did, and what I'm doing, is I became CEO of an agency called Said Differently, that is a non traditional agency, maybe not surprising given everything we've talked about. And what I love about this job and what I love about the agency is it's a model that is unexpected. Instead of having a big group of people under a rooftop, for any client, any brand, we find who the best people are, regardless of where they are in the world.
Mm.
And that's who we put on any given client. And I thought, wow, if I were back in my old role, I'd find this really intriguing. We were only 4 years old.
Mhm.
We're growing, which I love. We're building, which I love. And it's familiar because it's the industry I know of marketing and brand and advertising and the like, but it's also definitely writing with my left hand because it's the service side of the business, it's the other side of the table, it's figuring out, is there a different way in which
Mm.
to service clients, go to market. So it's trust me, it's making my brain hurt every day because it's
But
new.
it's so in your wheelhouse with different perspective and that fresh eyes. And
Yeah,
hey, I'm willing to do a little shape shifting. I mean, even
yeah,
the name
yeah,
said differently.
yeah,
Come on.
yeah, yeah. No,
That's
and that is a
so
credit
perfect.
to the
Yeah.
founders. It's a great name. It's a great name, and it is. I've always, you were kind to say this in your lovely introduction. I believe a challenger mentality is the right mentality. I also think it's so much more fun to be a challenger brand. We tried to show up like a challenger brand. Said differently, absolutely has a challenger brand mindset, and I love that. So it's been great, but completely different.
So, how did you know it was time to get back into something so different? Because I'm often asked by clients, I'm thinking about leaving this position, or I'm looking at a massive change, or I want to just start to get on boards now. And they say, when is the right time?
Yeah,
And for some, they may say, hey, you jump fast, like
yeah.
it
I did
came up.
jump fast.
And so, what do you say to people about that?
Yeah, I did jump fast. I am very energetic. I knew I wanted to
Yes,
continue to.
you are.
I'm very energetic. I knew I wanted to continue to operate. So I have had the great good fortune to be on and still am on some boards. So I know the greatness of board work, and and it's a privilege to be on a board.
Were you on boards prior to leaving
I
GE?
was. I was
You
on
would
the
already,
I was on the Duncan board, and
yep.
the way I would describe it is, for me at least, it wasn't the full meal. It was great side dishes, and I still wanted the full meal. I still, as I said, wanted to operate. So that was helpful because I think it's a I have great friends who've said, no, I want to go the board route, and they're on a bunch of fantastic boards, and it's an amazing choice.
Yeah.
It just wasn't my choice. So I would say I wasn't I wasn't ready to
You know what song I'm hearing in my mind right now? One more
one
time. When
more
you
time. I wanted one more ride. I wanted one more ride.
and I
I just
get it. I
did.
totally
I
get it.
and
And I love
I
that about
yeah.
you.
I still felt as though I had more to give. I had
Mhm.
more to learn. Um, and you know what, Hilary? This goes back to naivete, which I know and I understand why you pushed a little bit there. There was a little bit of why not, right? To me, that
I call it the I can do that syndrome, where you're like, I can do that.
better.
I can do
Yeah,
I
I
think
like
I can
that.
do that.
I think I can
I
do that.
I
And
think we might have it together.
I think we might have it together. And I think I didn't overthink the downsides because that's who I am. I don't overthink the downsides because my view is you can zig and zag and figure it out.
So I want to talk to you about midlife
Mm.
and this idea of really some of the best women in history have started completely new careers later on in their life.
Yep.
And I really admire the people that say, I'm not willing to just be and just sit and just do. I want to make more things happen, which is what you're doing. But you also have a new grandbaby. And when I asked I think it's a boy, is that right?
It's a girl, but that's okay.
No,
It's
it's
still a
not.
grandbaby.
Okay, but wait a second. I think we talked about your friend Katie Couric, who has a boy.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
She does have a boy.
you guys
Yeah,
really, every time you
yeah,
talk, it's
that's
like,
right.
what do you
That's
talk
right.
about? It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
grandbabies. Okay, so the granddaughter.
Yes.
And how do you divide your time? Because that is like such a, I wish I could spend more time, more time, more time. But now you are CEO of a company. How do you manage it all?
I mean, you never manage it all. When my kids were young, you
I
never
just like, can we put
you
it
never
on
manage
repeat?
it all. You and I
Thank
know
you.
it's such a myth. I mean, I think, get in the zone when you are doing work. I think you get in a zone as a parent, as a grandparent. It's hard to not always be in the zone, but I don't I'm not a great juggler. I think when I am focused on work, I'm really focused on work. I may have said this, I can't remember. When my kids were little, I coached my daughter in soccer, and I did that in some ways, Hilary, even though it was, not something I had a ton of time for, because I wanted to be all in with her on something. And it was something I could do on the weekends, and it worked. And I'd say the same thing with my amazing little Mackenzie, my granddaughter, which is,
Mhm.
I'm not there all the time, but there's no role for me to be there all the time. And when I am able to see her, which is, at least every couple weeks, if not more than that, it's, the rest of the world completely fades away, as I think grandparents just know it does, right? You just are, you're so in that moment. But I don't know. I like variety. I love working. I love working hard. It, I just couldn't. How could I say this? Um, if I were trying to do it all at once, it would look like garbage. But
You
I
know, I
don't.
like
I try to be there. I try to be present for what I'm present for.
you really are, and you do a really good job with that. So let me ask you about what else is on the docket for Linda? What else are you saying, hey, I still answer this question. I still want to, what would you say?
Um, One of the things I have not done a lot of is travel for pleasure. I've traveled a lot for business, a
Mhm.
lot, a lot. But there are countries, gosh, there are continents that I haven't been to, and that is absolutely something that I plan to and want to do. I hopefully will do it. I'll bring family, bring friends, bring my granddaughter at some point. So that's absolutely on the list. It's one of those things that I think. Needs a little bit of time and planning, and I put my time in planning other places. So that would definitely be one. But most
All
of,
right, but knowing this, I'm going to coach you a little
yeah,
bit.
please.
The only way to make things happen is to calendar it. And
Yeah.
as you said, it takes planning. So for somebody as busy as you, I have an amazing travel agent who plans what you want, and then you put it on your calendar and you go, girl. Like
Oh,
this is your time.
I
So
want
I'm going
it.
to when we get off. I'm going to tell you specifically.
Please bring
Okay.
it on. Please bring it on.
Yes.
But
It's
but
Rapture Travel, and I'm going to give you all of the details. She's out in New York,
oh,
Shelley Rapture. I mean,
fabulous.
just wow, 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 wow. And another thing I do want as we wrap up
Yeah,
here, because it's already been, I told you this was going to
so
go fast.
fast.
I'd really love to hear from you your take on people are having relaunches in their personal life right now, their business life, and we're also having global relaunches.
Yeah.
And when you think about all of that, what what are some of the things you do to keep yourself grounded?
Hmm. I think they're going to be sound so simple as to almost sound remedial, but I am a huge believer in a good night's sleep. There are few things in my mind, Hillary,
Changes everything, doesn't
that are
it?
more restorative than a good night's sleep. And I will often say, if there's a gnarly problem or I'm not ready, I'll just say I'll sleep on it. And that has always been the case for me.
Mhm.
I both I love to read, love, love, love new fiction, and I love to walk. So on the weekends, I will often take a really long walk with the dog while I listen to a book on Audible. And again, what I love about that is I have chosen a career that is grounded in many ways in storytelling. So I love
Mhm.
listening to stories, but listening to completely different stories. So that does it. But I mean, in the end, it's my family who really grounds me. My kids and my husband and the baby. They keep me humble. They keep me honest. They keep me laughing. That's
Well,
That's good
I've got
stuff.
to say, thank you, Linda Boff, for being here. How can people find you, follow you, get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm super easy. I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. Um, I'm Linda at said differently.com. I'm super accessible. I have every communications channel. And if anybody who is listening in any way wants to talk about relaunching or share a story or just, connect, it would be my pleasure.
Again, thank you so much for being here. And I knew this was going to be a great show, and you delivered the goods, girl. So, congrats on your new position. And I am absolutely following you, following your successes, and can't wait to hear after you've been there a year about how you have changed everything in the industry because you said differently know how to do that.
Well,
So, everyone, thank you for being here. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. And as I always say, you have to be thinking about relaunch love, relaunch life, and relaunch now. Do not wait. Just like I said, Linda, get that trip planned. It's time. There's never been a better time than to relaunch today. We'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks again for being here. If you like this video and want to get more like it, head over here.